This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Glad to have you on board. Again, take a few moments if you would and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you click the bell. Make sure you're going to be getting notifications of when I post my podcast or my vodcast, depending on how you're listening to it here today, is I tend to publish once a week, so I deal with all issues related to wildlife control. If you have suggestions for a particular topic you'd like me have me cover, definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Do join us on Facebook. We have the Pest Geek Podcast family on Facebook. We have our own little page. You can join us there, and where you can share ideas and ask questions and join the revolution, as Franklin calls it, who's my colleague who runs the other part of the Pest Geek Podcast. So glad to have you on board here, of course. And so today I wanted to talk about voles. And so vole control is something that we really need to think about, because this is the time of year you want to control voles. And so voles are mouse-like creatures. Sometimes they're called meadow mice. And this isn't going to be a biology lesson on voles today. So if that's what you're looking for, this is not going to be that training event today. But you need to be looking at controlling voles now if you have clients who've had vole trouble in the past. And so this is the time, because you want to control them as their populations are declining as we're moving into wintertime. People say, well, shouldn't I be doing it in the spring? And no, you can do it in the spring. The problem is that's not going to stop the damage that's going to occur over the wintertime. So when your clients call you in the spring, or when the snow thaws and they start seeing these runs through the grass and their grass is all torn up, that damage occurred over the winter as the voles are working underneath the snow, because voles do not hibernate. And so they are active year-round, and so they take advantage of the snow cover to damage the turf. And also they'll damage trees, of course, because it's usually they're starving. They're running out of food, and so they will gnaw on smooth-barked trees to get at that cambium layer to get the sugars that are involved there so that they can survive the winter. So being a vole is a pretty tough life. They often don't live longer than a year, and most of them don't even live probably that long. So it's very hard. So their reproductive rate's quite high. So the time to control voles, if you have clients, the time to control voles is now. So you're looking at September, October, November, ideally before the snow hits, is what you want to be doing. So, and that may be a hard sell for your clients, but you want to be definitely telling them, we want to knock that population. The population's already going on a downward trend, and so when you add control, it plummets that. So you're not going to have that turf and ornamental damage that's occurring over the wintertime, or you're having a less likelihood to. So definitely something for you to think about. So I wanted to show you a particular website. I have no financial relationship to this website. I have never communicated with the owner of this website. Just throwing that out. I would love to. I'd love to do a show on him, but I have not reached out to him. But I was doing some searching, and I came across this site, and I said, this is a pretty clever idea, and I wanted to expose you as wildlife control operators that this is a company that helps homeowners handle their vole problems. And I think he's got a kind of a clever system here, and I wanted to sort of spotlight this and say, hey, this is something you may want to consider. You may have clients who aren't willing to pay, or maybe this is a part of your business that you don't want to expand into. All those answers are fine. I'm not here to tell you, vole control is going to make you rich. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm just simply saying I think we should always be in the business of helping clients resolve conflicts with wildlife in a responsible, legal manner. And I'm kind of intrigued with this site. I think it's kind of neat, and I think this guy has an interesting system that may give you an idea on how you run your own company, and maybe add Voles, or just simply tell your clients, hey, this is a guy you can go check out, deal with him, and then you have a customer who doesn't feel like they've been quote unquote blown off. Okay, so anyways, it's volecontrol.com, pretty straightforward name, and he has a vole control system that you can purchase. And notice the little clever way makes it very step by step, understanding your voles, and then he gets down into the system on how to control them, and then how to locate the hot spots. He talks about the apple test. You as a professional can also get access to non-toxic baits. You know, Leaf-Attack has one. I think Bell Labs has another one, where these are basically the formulations of rodenticides without the rodenticide. And so you can put those into bait stations, make it look very professional, and then you can use those as monitoring systems to see if you're having enough vole activity. You can create what's called a vole activity index. And so what you're doing is you're putting out these blocks in bait stations or in areas underneath cover, because remember, voles love cover, and you would then go out, leave them out there for a couple of days, and then come back and check them. And then the ones that are damaged, you would get an idea on how severe is the damage. Are they really getting invaded? You know, if you put a couple of these non-toxic blocks out and you come back 2 days later and they're gone, you know, they've been gnawed right down to the wire, well, then you clearly have a serious problem there, but you would have probably seen a whole bunch of trails as well, right? So it gives you an indication of where the hot spots are, and also whether there's even a need for control at that particular time. Now you may say, well, what is the method? Well, you're taking some apple slices or some of these non-toxic baits, and you can put them either in a bait station and position them strategically around the yard, or you can also take these slices and put them underneath sort of a pie plate, where the vole can sneak underneath and gnaw on it in security and safety and then leave. Remember, voles want cover. That's why they like tall grass, because everything eats a vole. I mean, a vole's life is just basically lived in terror of something eating it, because everything wants to eat a vole. You know, the hawks and the owls and other types of predators that go along the run. Weasels will go after them. So all kinds of predators will eat voles. I think even raccoons and skunks will eat them as well. I think possums will take them. So it is tough being a vole. And so any time that they can be undercover, they want to be that way. So that's why when you're seeing the grass cuts, when you see the grass cutting, where it's like basically someone leaving a garden hose on the lawn for too long, it cuts right down to the soil. That's because the vole is using that trail. They're clipping the grass all the way down, because they want that grass to grow over them, sort of like a little grass tunnel. So that way they're sheltered from being seen from above, which is obviously a very vulnerable place for them. So the same thing you would do with these apple slices or these non-toxic baits. You'd position them around, and then you come back and then look at how much gnawing was done on these, and you'd kind of get a feel for when something is severe and when's not. Some things you just kind of have to let it ride a little bit, sort of get some experience, and then say, okay, where's the trend line, and then look at the physical damage on the property and the testimony of the client, and ask yourself the questions like, okay, is this at enough level? Am I getting enough activity here on these products to justify doing control? And you can go at that. So that's the hotspot idea with the apple test or the non-toxic bait test. And then you basically conquer your vole problem. I mean, this is a very, very clever way that has this set up. So let's take a look at his vole bait station system. And again, I just want to point out here, you don't have to use toxicants, and you may have clients that don't want toxicants used. This system can be modified, in my opinion, to allow your traps, your mouse traps. So that is something you can certainly think about if you wanted to use a non-toxic or maybe a blended approach where maybe you're trapping first and then following up with a rodenticide that may last you through the winter when the snow flies. So this is something to think about. So anyways, he has a frequently asked question area here, right? And so we're going to learn about the system. And so we're going to scroll down here and take a look. He talks about pet concerns and this sort of thing. So the Volt bait station system, let's take a look. All right, let's take a look. Learn about the system. Here we go. Okay, so learn about the system. There's the box. Again, very cleverly marketed here. So here he has a bait station. Let me maybe see if I can zoom in here a little bit to show you this a little bit better. There it is. Okay. So here he has a bait station placed under this mulch and basically pine needles. Notice that this provides the voles easy access to the bait stations while they feel that sense of cover. What some people do is they will take a piece of plywood, a sheet of plywood, and they will cut a hole in it to allow the T station vertical portion to go through the hole, and then the wood rests over the inverted T portion of the bait station to give those voles a place of protection. It also makes it harder for a non-target animal to get in to that bait station, so you have a double effect there. Of course, you want to make sure everything's anchored down and that you're following the toxicant label, because you have to read that rodenticide label. A lot of your commensal rodent rodenticides will have voles listed on the label, and so you want to look at the label carefully. Is this allowed with bait stations within 50 feet of the house or 100 feet of the house or a permanent structure? So make sure you read that carefully. And so this is a mulch covering method that he speaks of. So let me kind of reduce the zoom on this now and look at one of his other options. And here's the other option that he has, where he uses some plastic, which is a kind of a clever way of doing it. It certainly would take up less space in your vehicle than sheets of plywood. Also maybe be a little less damage to the turf. Obviously if this stayed in this location for an extended period of time, whether it's plastic or whether it's plywood, you're going to get death of the grass underneath. But again, you should be doing this during maybe the dormant period. That's what I would recommend, although you can control voles any time of year. The ideal time, if we're talking about the premier time, is obviously the fall. Or before that snow flies, because then you're really going to hammer that population. They're going to be food stressed, of course. They're running out of food, and you want to hammer that population before the winter time hits. But this is a very clever little tenting area, because again, voles want to they're attracted to places of shelter, and so this is his method of sheltering. Again, I think this is just very, very clever, and I really have to commend him on this. And so basically he has this little system set up, and I think he's using first generation anticoagulant, which certainly is a safer method rather than using your second gens. I would encourage you, as wildlife control professionals or pest control professionals, if you can, I'm going to certainly encourage you to try to use your first gens to control your voles. That'd be like a chlorothacinone or a difacinone, rather than, hitting them hard with a bromadiolome or a brodifocum or a difethalone. Try to avoid those. Think about, I don't have enough knowledge about the warfarin side of things. Many, may be harder to find a warfarin, but warfarin would be safer still. But otherwise, think warfarin, chlorothacinone, difecinone, and try not to be wedded to a particular rodenticide, because you want to make sure you avoid animals getting resistant to it. So maybe using chlorofascinone 1 year, come back, use difascinone the next year, and maybe try a warfarin in a couple places to see if you're getting good control. And because these are, the first gens do require some multiple feeding, so make sure you don't let your bait stations run out. Kind of get a feel for how much damage is going on there, how much vole activity is going on there, and making sure that those products, that you have enough bait in your systems, or be sure you're visiting often enough. And I think this can be a way to make some money for yourself over the slower winter months if your business is actually slower during the winter months, because a lot of people really care about their grass, they care about their ornamentals, and this is a pretty... If I hate climbing ladders, you don't have to climb ladders with voles, and so that's one of the things I love about voles. And so this is something. Or if you don't want to do it, then turn them on to this. Maybe give this guy a call and say, hey, can I be a dealer? Can I buy this in bulk? Check it out. Again, I don't make any money on this either way. I don't even know this gentleman. I just think this gentleman's system here is clever. And I think that this is something you might want to check out to make some money on your own. I guess that's about as big of an endorsement as I can get without really talking more about it. But check it out, see if it's going to work for you. And I hope that's helpful for you. Now, what you may say, well, Stephen, I really need a little bit more. I need more information on voles, and so let me do a little self-promotion here. And so this is, as many of you know, and again, I'm not speaking here on behalf of the Montana Department of Agriculture. I want to be sure that's clear. I'm here on my own time. This is my own podcast. The state doesn't have input on what I say here. I'm not representing the state of Montana, but those of you that listen to my podcast know that I work for the Department of Ag, and my job is a vertebrate pest specialist, and I help people resolve wildlife conflicts. And so I have one of those is I create publications or modify and update publications. So I want to tell you how to get to my publications. So you can come to the Montana Department of Ag website. Just put that in your search browser, Montana Department of Agriculture, and it'll come up. You'll come to our home page here. This is our home page. Under Department Topics, click Topics, Department Topics, and you'll see this very ugly page emerge. In the lower right-hand column, you'll see a phrase that says vertebrate pest. Pretty easy. Click that. There's a little paw print next to it. That brings you to my page. You can scroll down. Those of you interested in my vertebrate pest training calendar, you can learn about some of the trainings that I'm giving if you're here in Montana or what have you. You can definitely check that out. But you just want to scroll down, and you can see in the right-hand column here, it says Montana Vertebrate Pest Bulletins. And so you can click that, and that'll drop you halfway down the page. If you don't want to click the link, just scroll down. We're about halfway down the page. This section here is my publications related to vertebrate pests or wildlife. I have a publication on voles. You say, well, Stephen, we don't have some of the, you're in Montana. What's it got to do with me in Pennsylvania or Georgia or Florida or whatever? Look, vole control is vole control as a general rule. There's some nuance in some of the species, but generally speaking, a vole is a vole is a vole. Okay, no matter what species it is, as a general rule, the principles are the same. Now, some of you are living in states that have endangered or threatened voles. You need to be sure, again, reading that pesticide label, looking at your regulations within the state. Do you have voles that are under state protection? I think there might even be some that are under federal protection, but I know there are some under state protection. You need to be sure you're following that label. I always encourage people to look at Bulletins Live too, and I'll pull that link up here. I should have thought about that earlier. But anyways, my publication here is Voles in Montana, Their Biology, Damage, and Control. So you can simply click that, and that brings you to my publication on voles. Here it is. It talks about identification, separating them from deer mice, the type of damage that occurs, how they differ from pocket gophers, what kind of habitat voles live in, and the type of damage that they can do. And so here's one of my photos. Notice the cut trail. Let me zoom into that so you can see it a little bit better. So look at that trail. That's what I talked about. It's like someone left a garden hose on the grass because it killed the grass all the way down to the soil. Well, that's classic vole runs. Typically, meadow voles will do something like that, but that can be done by prairie voles as well. We have both. We have prairie voles in our state and meadow voles. And then, of course, you have, how do you protect some trees? Trees with thin bark. And how you can trap, and I talk about that as well. And you can have some other types of systems, because you can use, just like you can put covers over your bait stations, you can also put covers over your traps. Some people actually use inverted plastic gutters, and they will cut sections of them, drill holes, and they will then put the snap traps along the trail, and then protect the snap traps with the inverted inverted gutters, and then pin those to the ground, so that way you don't have dogs and cats getting into them. And you don't even need to bait them. The voles, if you use expanded triggers, the vole's just going to run right over that and get caught. All right. So you don't have to. You can bait them if you wish, but you don't have to bait them. Right. So there are non-toxic methods. I know some wildlife control operators, they're part of their business model is not to use rodenticides. That's cool. I'm okay with that. Well, this is a way that you can have that particular system done with traps. And you don't want to do that. This is someone that I really have a lot of respect for, Rick Shadell of Pennsylvania. I call him a master trapper. He's probably better to call him a master trapper and wildlife control operator. I mean, the guy's a genius, in my opinion. He created these little triangular boxes, and where he just will cluster a lot of baited mouse traps underneath those boxes. And then he has a hole in it, so he will then take a T-stake and then stake that down so kids can't pick it up. And then when he comes out, he can then pull that stake out, lift it up to see if he's caught any voles. Again, very clever idea, and these are stackable. And he can have them. He does vole control work for his clients out in Pennsylvania. Of course, you have bait stations, of course, and then you can even use your multiple catch mouse traps to catch voles. Just plop that puppy right in the trail and to catch your voles that way. So there are alternative multiple catch methods of catching voles. And then, of course, here's your inverted T bait station. Again, you only need about 1.5 inch tube. And you can put bait blocks, put a wire in here, put your bait box down in this, and the voles will just simply chew that stuff up. And so there's a lot of options for you. If you're using pelletized bait, you might want to have a little bit larger tube and then make sure you don't have pellets coming out of the end. But this is information you can certainly read. Again, I updated this in 2019, so it's really not that old. And you can download this at no additional cost. I don't call it free because fee dollars have paid for this. And so as I tell people, it's not free. You just don't have to pay for it again. Okay? And so always be nervous when a government official or a politician says something's free. They may not be trying to deceive, but some may. But no politician should ever call something free that comes from the government, because it's not free, folks, right? So it really puzzles me how many Americans don't realize that. So that's quite concerning. So I hope none of you have that mythology in your head that something from the government that's free. It's not free. Someone had to pay for that, and it's usually with tax dollars or with fees and that sort of thing. So anyways, this is a publication that's available. I have others out on the market as well. You can simply do a Google search, Vantassel and Voles, and you'll have other publications that will arise as well. But I do want to bring up here the Bulletins Live 2. And I think this is an important, not Bulletins Live Toe. That's my mistake. Bulletins Live 2. This is from the EPA. And this is I encourage you to check it out, because this is something that lets you know if there are any restrictions on pesticides in your particular area in the month you're looking to treat. And so what you're going to do here is you basically, in this little section here, let me kind of zoom in a little bit more. Zoom in a little bit more here so you can see a little bit better. You can see this little spot here, find your place or address. And I'm just going to put in my zip code. This is where I live. And notice how it zooms in like a Google Earth. And here I am in Lewistown, right? And so there are no red sections here. That tells you there are no pesticide restrictions at the federal level for rodenticides or other pesticides in the box here in this map. And so I can click the results. I can do search, scroll down here, do a search. Again, nothing comes up. See, no limitations within the map view. And then you can do a printable bulletins. You can click that. So we'll wait a second. Sometimes it has a little trouble with Explorer. You may have to use a Chrome or something. Shouldn't be taking quite this long. Maybe the... Yeah, it does have some trouble with Explorer. So let's try this with Chrome. Okay, we'll go to Bulletins Live 2. There I am. So I'm going to put in my zip code. Notice there are no restrictions there. I'm going to scroll down, hit the search key. No limitations within map view. You can also check here for results, and then you can do a printable bulletin. There it is. There I got my printable bulletin. And this is what you would print out, this PDF. This is your Endangered Species Protection Bulletin, and then you would attach this to your pesticide label. Now, often your pesticide label will tell you whether you are obligated to do this. For a lot of your, those of you working in urban areas or heavily populated suburban areas, this may not be a big deal. However, I encourage people to check it out just to make sure, because things change, and you always want to be cutting edge, and plus it can give you a little sense of security in the sense, I've gone the extra step, even though my label didn't maybe require me to do this. But I think it's just kind of a nice step to do. But again, in the geographical area marked off by this particular map, there are no limitations on pesticides in terms of endangered or threatened species here. So that's good news, right? Now you may be in an area. Let me do one where I know there is a restriction. Okay, so let me do here in a place called Cut Bank. Now notice here, there is a restriction. See all that pink that came up? That tells you, there is a restriction here. But now we got to find out, what is that restriction? And so I go to the results page, the results link here. Come on. Click for me. We're having some challenges here. Oh, there it is. Okay, a little slow. My mistake. So now it tells you Rosal prairie dog bait, kaput prairie dog bait, and kaput combo prairie dog bait. Now, what's confusing about this is if you look carefully at it, you'll see that it has the active ingredient listed. Now, this does not mean that the active ingredient is prohibited in this particular area. In other words, if you're in downtown Cut Bank, you can still use a diphacinone product to control mice or whatever. What you can't use is the Rosal prairie dog product, which is chlorphacinone, and you can't use the kaput prairie dog bait. So what they're doing is they're giving you the active ingredient that's associated with the specific pesticides that are prohibited. So it's a little confusing because sometimes people will think, this has banned all chlorphacinone products. No, because we had a big discussion about this in Montana. Because this is quite confusing. but they're trying to tell you that this is the active ingredient, but the only products that are prohibited are the ones mentioned there, and you can see the EPA numbers of the 3 products that are prohibited during this particular month. Okay, and so you say, well, I know I can't use those, can I? And then you can print that bulletin out, of course, but you also can do a different month. So let's say you wanted to do a different search. Let's go back here, and I want to find out, are there any restrictions in December or January? Let's do January 2022. Let's say I know I'm going to do some control in January. Will there be a restriction there? And so let me hit the search key, and sure enough, there is a restriction. And let's hit those results key again, and nothing's listed, however, which is rather interesting. So let's try that again. Oh, there it is. There are the restrictions again. So you have to play with it a little bit. Don't use Explorer when you're using Bulletins Live 2. But chances are most of you in the areas where you're going to be working in urban areas or in heavily populated suburban areas, you probably won't see any restrictions at all. However, you might, and then you want to check the results to see if there are restrictions on the particular rodenticide that you're planning on using. Print that document out, attach it to your pesticide label, because that is an official part of your pesticide label. And it's another way for you to take that extra step to be very careful in the proper use of your rodenticides. Okay, well, we talked a little bit again today about Voles. This little clever site I mentioned before, Vole Control Bait Station System. I hope you find it useful. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not making any money on this. I don't even know the gentleman who's done this. This is completely on my own. Hey, I would love to get paid for it, but in any event, I'm not. I'd love to get some feedback from you. I hope that this is in a way that you can expand your business opportunity, and certainly if maybe handle clients that you don't want to be dealing with, and to say, look, hey, check this out. This is something they may want to look into, and I think it's very customer friendly. And if it's customer friendly, it's friendly for you too, and this is maybe something you can incorporate into your business model. Worth checking out. Well, my name is Stephen Vantassel. I am the host of Living the Wildlife podcast. Again, thanks so much for listening. Do take a few moments, subscribe to our channel, give us a 5-star rating. I'd love to hear from you if you have comments and suggestions for the show. Perhaps you want to be interviewed on the show, or you know of a particular topic or someone that I should interview for the show. I'd love to hear from them. You can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. A lot of you, of course, have contacting me through Messenger or on Facebook. You can also join our Facebook page, the Pest Geek Podcast on the Facebook page. Do join us. We'd love to have you on board. And again, this is Living the Wildlife. Why? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everyone.